Translating different media into TTRPGs is one of the most fascinating topics to me. It's what this channel is based around. But the idea of trying to translate certain things just doesn't work so well. A TTRPG is a story with mechanics as a framework, and a lot of the times there are things in stories that just don't translate into that framework properly. Enter today's sponsor. Now, I will be totally honest, this whole video is sponsored, but I am excited to talk about it because of one specific reason. Our sponsor for today, Apocalypse, and I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. I did look it up, so if I pronounce it wrong for the rest of this video, it's Google's fault. Google lied to me.
Apocalypse.
I know, shocking. The internet can lie to us. But today's sponsor, Apocalypse, John's Guide to Armageddon, I think is an incredible show of how to take different literature and stories and transfer them into the mechanics of TTRPGs to really make it all shine. Apocalypse is a Kickstarter that is going from February 15th to March 3rd, and I honestly think you should check it out. The quality behind this is incredible, and it really got me excited about a topic which I don't usually get excited to talk about, and that is the Bible.
Why do Christians call that special book the Bible? The Bible? Is that how it's pronounced? I've literally never heard anyone say it before.
Now, my personal opinions on the Bible and religion in general aside, the actual content in this is incredible because Apocalypse is a representation and a translation of the Book of Revelation into a TTRPG format. Specifically, this is for 5e, and I do think it is important to support this because, as we have all stated, we fought against Wizards of the Coast and the whole OGL situation to support third-party creators. So that's why I'm excited to do this video, on top of talking about how to transfer literature into a TTRPG setting. Now, for those of you who have not read the Book of Revelation from the Bible, it is essentially an exploration of the end times. It is a prophecy from John, who wrote some of it, and forgive me, it's been a long time since I've researched any of this, so if I get something wrong, just, let me know in the comments. But the point is, it is an exploration of a prophecy depicting the end times. And Apocalypse has done an incredible job of transferring all of those mechanics and ideas into the setting that we're going to be using. So let's dive right into it. John's Guide to the Armageddon is, as they described it, a perfect mix of Mad Max and Fury Road and the Renaissance. And I think honestly that's a great way of describing it. It's an apocalyptic wasteland where man has chosen to try and survive, and all those who are left on the world are sinners and forgotten. They must survive where there is no longer hardly any resources and must fend for themselves against the demons and horrible planes that exist now. And honestly, I think that is a fantastic idea. The system itself encourages you to actually only use a specific type of character origin known as the Last Ones. Now, the Last Ones are fascinating because they are all human. However, they do get special abilities and can have something known as marks. The marks are incredibly fascinating and I think an amazing tool because what it does is it takes the entire concept of being marked from the Book of Revelation. Now, being marked in the Book of Revelation, and again, I'm not a scholar, and I haven't studied this stuff in a long time, so please forgive me, is essentially a way of marking somebody of having done something sinful or being marked for a certain kind of prophecy. In this game, it translates that idea to being focused on the fact that you have been marked for fate and for a specific reason, which means you get something called a mark dice. These are dice that are equal to your proficiency modifier that you get to roll, which give you bonuses, and you can use them a certain amount of times per day before using a long rest. Now, the bonuses that they give you are pretty small. It's only a d4 and you roll it alongside your roll to see if you can add on enough to reach the DC. The interesting and fascinating parts about these, however, is they do have different features. If you roll a 1 on that dice, you instead have to roll on a table, which then gives you a different debuff because you have gone against fate or fate has marked you for death. However, if you roll highest on that dice, you then get to roll it again as fate has granted you a boon and you continue to push forward because this is the path of which you are marked for, and I think that's very fun. On top of this, the Last Ones are also encouraged to pick 2 different types of things which will then affect the character. These being known as sins and virtues. Essentially, you choose a sin, which is your vice, and a virtue of which you choose to uphold. So I could say my sin is greed, but my virtue is my kindness. And at this point, what would happen is it's used as a storytelling technique. Now, sins and virtues are a pretty common trait in the Bible. However, when you look at it from the point of view of a DM, what this means is it's encouragement for roleplay. Should a player choose to act on their sin or their virtue, you now have the ability to grant them inspiration. Inspiration is actually pretty commonly given out in this module, and I think there's a specific reason of why. It's a way for the DM to encourage the players to really buy into the setting itself, which I think is just really fun. A lot of really cool stuff is going on there. Now, the sins and virtues you might recognize as simply being looking very similar to the bonds and weaknesses that you would ordinarily put on a character sheet. And while you're not wrong, I think it really is a flavorful way of playing into the story and the theme that this entire thing is going for. And this is the thing, I think the reason that I like this so much is because it took a look at all of the themes of the Book of Revelation and found a way to really translate it in an incredible way TTRPG wise. They didn't focus too much on the mechanics. The marked dice have nothing to do with the Bible, let's be honest. But they took a look at TTRPGs and said, what's important there? Many of the times, what's important is the dice and what's being rolled. And how can we include that as a feature that still relates to the theme of the book that we're translating from? And that's what I think any aspiring creator should look at when trying to translate a story from media into TTRPGs. Because tabletop games are very, very crucial on making sure that the mechanics support the thematic themes of the story you're creating. If we're creating a superhero story, we need to make sure that the themes are backed up by mechanics of incredible bouts of strength and heroics. If we don't allow that, then it's not going to feel like a superhero-like game. And that's where I think it is really important to learn from Apocalypse. Looking at the different themes and giving mechanics to support it will make the game feel more intent and valuable. I honestly think that's why D&D 5e kind of got a bad rap for a while, because it was so easy to insert mechanics into D&D 5e, but you didn't actually take a look at the thematic elements of it. For somebody who wants to overcome all odds and truly have that anime moment of heroicism, it's necessary to be able to overcome the limitations of your dice. It's actually a trope in anime to go beyond 100% of your power. But you can't do that unless there's a mechanic in place for it. Apocalypse understands that by placing these different things there. They also go through the process of making sure to give different archetypes for the different types of classes that would fit in this world. And they don't go so far as just to create these random stat blocks or new features to use. Instead, they really make it clear how those archetypes will fit into their world. For example, the fighter. They refer to it as a new martial archetype, the Furioso. And basically what it is saying if you're going to choose a fighter type archetype, this is how this is going to work in this world. This is how you could easily translate it without too much issues. Too many times do we see people try and make new entire worlds for D&D 5e and they just shove the classes in there without really taking into account how the classes would actually exist in those worlds. But Apocalypse has done an excellent job of translating it that way. Furiosos are people who put on a brave front and will fight with fierce ferocity and a large charismatic front, but we know that it's not true. They still live on an apocalyptic wasteland and they're scared, but they are forced to put up that front of being ferocious and angry and always in control. Meanwhile, we can look at the sorcerer's otherworldly bloodline. It simply takes into account the different spiritual aspects of this world. Demons, ghosts, and angels means that probably there is going to be some influence in that when it comes to sorcerer's bloodlines. And so they took that into account. Really, when you're trying to translate media into anything else, you have to understand how it's going to make sense in your world and how to make the mechanics back up the themes, because without that, it's going to feel lifeless, heartless. And I really think Apocalypse is the exact opposite of that. Also notice that I've really enjoyed saying Apocalypse in every single portion of this video, and I really hope that is how you pronounce it, because if it's not, I've really made a fool of myself, but at least you guys can laugh at me in the comments. Ultimately, I think this is a fantastic module and a great way of supporting D&D 5e third-party creators, which is exactly what we were all fighting for so often just a little bit ago. So I would really encourage you all to go check out their Kickstarter. Again, the links are in the description. It goes from February 15th to March 3rd, and I cannot wait to see the full aspect of this, because I think it is really a great product with a lot of amazing theming, and the pieces that these guys have put out beforehand have been incredible, so I don't expect anything less from this. Anyways, go out into the world and make it your own. Never forget to play your role.